How's it going, gamers? And welcome to the channel. My name is Q, and thanks for stopping by. If you're new to the channel, hit a like and subscribe if you like the content. This tells me, and gives me some insight on whether or not the content that I'm creating is something that is catching your guys' eyes, or are you guys interested in the topics that I do bring up. So let's get right into it. One of the main topics as of late that people are talking about is Sony, and a lot of things happening with not only the PlayStation Store, but also the PlayStation 4 itself, and the fact that Lance McDonald, if you haven't followed him on Twitter, recognized that the internal battery system of the PS4, if it ever dies on you, which it will eventually, it needs to sync with the PSN network in order to ensure that the system, the internal clock, is somehow authorized. It's like an authorization token or something like that with the internal clock with the PSN network. But if it doesn't sync with the PSN network and your battery dies, not only does your system not play digital games, but even your physical games aren't able to be played, which is kind of outrageous. I've always been a proponent of physical media. I'm kind of old school like that. I've started into the gaming industry with the Nintendo system, the NES, but I went back and repurchased like the Atari and the Intellivision and things like that. And I love playing some of the old classic game systems and even repairing them when the batteries die or when certain capacitors break. I'll go in and solder them and fix them. But they've always worked, and gaming systems have always worked as they're supposed to. I think as the generations went on and we started developing systems, especially the console manufacturers started developing systems and started incorporating online elements to it, and really pushing digital media, you can see a lot of signs, because as soon as a server shuts down, unless you've already downloaded the game, there's no way for you to re-download the game. And if there's an issue with your memory, your hard drive, or your whatever it is that you're storing the game on goes bad and you need to rebuild it, you're kind of out of luck. And this is the one drawback with digital games. And really, with digital games, what it is that, you really don't own the game. You pretty much are just leasing it. And some of the cons with this is that you're kind of subject to what's going on by the companies and how they decide to operate that particular network ecosystem. And as generations came and gone, you saw that a lot of generations, they change platforms and they change formats, which is kind of ridiculous. But I think we're slowly seeing that change now. If you think about the PlayStation, the architecture from the PlayStation 1 to the 2 to the 3, all different. And then from the 3 to the 4, again, all different. And then it wasn't until recently that Sony had the PlayStation 5's architecture match up with the 4, so backwards compatibility was a little bit more smoother. Whereas, with the PlayStation 3, I have one of the original PlayStation 3 that I bought for $600, and man, that thing had literally a PlayStation 2 and a PlayStation 1 chipset into the actual hardware in order to play backwards compatibility, because the chipsets were so different in architecture. They couldn't emulate it in software. And with the PlayStation 4, it was the same thing. The chipset on the PS3 with the Emotion engine was so different. There's no way they would be able to incorporate that and bear on the additional cost that the PlayStation 3 had, which was really unprecedented at the time, right? So with that, for me, game preservation is, I love physical media, because physical media used to be where you can just, pop in the game and play it, regardless of how old your systems are. And even to this point now with Sony and Microsoft, and to the extent a little bit with Nintendo with like the Wii U and also the Wii, is that, some of these even physical media games require patches. So if you don't have the latest patches, or you lose a file off of that physical game, there is a possibility that you can't even play your physical games, which to me, I think is such a backwards way of doing things. Back in the days, games, when they were made, and they were, good or bad, they were done, and that was what it is. They had extensive Q&A testing, and you had a complete game. You didn't have to worry about patching and all this stuff. And I think, The pros to patching is like, developers can fix a lot of issues that they find later on down the road. But the bad thing about this is with physical media is like, unless you have that patch file, how are you going to be able to preserve that game in the long run, right? So now let's go back to the PlayStation 4. The fact that they made this internal clock this way as a security feature because of the trophy system and the way it's meant to prevent people from cheating, I can see that. But I don't understand why, syncing up with the PSN, and I could see that being an issue, with like the digital stuff. But the fact that it's going to affect physical media too as well is to me a little bit of an oversight by the engineering team. Maybe again, Sony doesn't really care about, their legacy products, and they figure people were going to move on, and the old systems eventually people are not going to care. They're not going to want to, play the old systems, but that's such a big oversight. I'm pretty sure that, the community is going to find a way to stand up, a replicated server, time server that would do the same thing if the PSN network was ever to go down or not be compatible with the PS4, because that possibility is there. Because this segues into another aspect of Sony and their decision making with their PlayStation Network, is that they're shutting down a lot of the old games, the PlayStation 3, the Vita store, so that is going to, I guess, for a lot of people that that bought those digital games, you have to kind of prepare for what's going to happen, that potentially there's going to be no way for you to recover your digital media because those stores are shut down and there's no way to do that. And to me, if I don't know if it's a maintenance thing or a cost thing, but if Sony is like, like Microsoft and like Nintendo that has these online services, the cost of running the servers are one thing, but hosting the files isn't taking up that much space. When you really think about it, a copy of a game, they're not having thousands of copies to serve out to customers. It's one master copy, and that one master copy gets fed to as many users that connect onto that network. So from a storage capacity standpoint, it doesn't really make sense. But, it could be a lot of other factors from a business perspective, guys. It could be licensing. You see a lot of old games that don't exist anymore due to licensing that have expired, and it's it's licensing, it's distribution rights, it's a lot of what the legal aspect of game distribution is in the US and in other parts of the world, is that you have end of certain movie licenses, music licenses, things like that will affect redistribution of the digital media. And this is why for me, I've always been an advocate of that physical game media, right? I have a lot of my physical Dreamcast games, and some of those games, even if they get remastered today, the music track is not on there. And some of the music tracks from like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 for like the PlayStation and the Dreamcast, it's there. You have the physical media. If you buy the latest remakes, which the game looks great on the Xbox and the PlayStation 5 and PC, but it doesn't have the original soundtrack, right? So really there's definitely that trade-off between digital and physical. But even now with a lot of companies embracing digital, I do worry that these companies are going to put mechanisms in place that even will render physical media pointless, and that's the scary part of it. And it's just not Sony, it's Microsoft as well, and it's Nintendo as well, because even with my Switch and the cartridges that I have for physical games, there's patches to those games. So all of a sudden, if they decide to shut it down, what happens, right? So I really think that the future of gaming, and we're starting to see it now, with both Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, is that the hardware is going to be irrelevant in the future. I think they are trying to build a common platform. And if they build that common platform, that could be a way for them to preserve those legacy products and preserve a lot of the original games that came out within that platform, right? I think Microsoft is doing a better job at backwards compatibility with all the investments into, supporting original Xboxes games on their platform. So I think they are seeing that in a much long-term picture. Whereas Sony realized that now that they've, they're sticking with the x86 architecture. I don't really see them changing from that unless all of a sudden they throw a curveball at the gaming industry with like the PlayStation 6. But I see that Sony's going to build the same thing. They didn't have that with the PlayStation 1, 2, and 3, but starting with the 4, they decided, you know what, we're just going to go with off-the-shelf technology and customize it a little bit and refine it to save costs on R&D, and then now build a common platform along that same architecture. So I think with that, it bodes well for Sony, customers that have the PlayStation 5 and any future PlayStation platforms, that they can play PlayStation 4 games on there with minimal effort, minimal issues. I think, their band-aid to backwards compatibility with PlayStation Now, and really PlayStation Now is streaming, right? All that is being emulated or ran on the server side. And I believe there are a few games you can download on the PlayStation Now network, but a lot of PlayStation Now was because they acquired Akamai back in the days, and that was the streaming platform or cloud platform. So I think for Sony, it might be that in the next generation or this generation that they reinvest money into creating good emulation software. I mean, if the community can create emulation software for PlayStation 3, PlayStation 1, and 2, why not Sony put some money, dedicate some developers into creating a core engine to emulate your legacy stuff, and then put that into the platform that you're having now with PlayStation Plus, because we definitely know PlayStation Plus is here to stay. I mean, they were late to the game. Xbox Live was really the key leader in online services, and then once Sony realized there was a model behind that, PlayStation Plus came out of that. And I think PlayStation Now was because of that acquisition with Akamai, but eventually I think they need to roll that into one platform, just like the way Microsoft is now rolling Xbox Live with Game Pass, and Game Pass is going to be their platform of the future, right? Game Pass is going to be where you're going to get day and date games from first party and select third parties, and it's going to be that value add that they're doing. The monthly. And the reason and how they do these monthly subscriptions or yearly subscriptions is that it's always going to be a certain higher cost going month to month, because they need to show the value. So at month to month, you're going to see these, prices from both Sony and Microsoft at like, $10 or $15 a month or whatever that cost is, that's cost structure that they're going to set. And then what they're going to tell you is, for 1 year, you can save 30% or you can save 50% and commit to 1 year. Because the whole goal is to have customers commit to that platform. Once you have commitment into that platform, then you can resell them on other services outside of that platform. So microtransactions with a lot of these games, which I don't really agree on. I don't like microtransactions. I'm okay with DLC as long as the DLC makes sense, but definitely there's ways to monetize and keep customers engaged. The games as a service, I mean, they're trying to go, Microsoft's definitely showing that there's a business model behind subscription service. And I'll have another video where I'll actually show you the profitability of subscription services. And one thing I want to state is that games are much more different than music and videos, right? Because music and videos are not dynamic. They're one set. It's a certain, beginning and end, a certain outcome. The experience that you get as an individual from listening to music or watching a movie, yes, it's going to vary from customer to customer or user to user, but in games, because it's such a dynamic aspect of entertainment, that everybody is almost guaranteed a different experience, right? You might experience the story in the same way that unfolds, but the way you enjoy that experience is going to be totally different from everyone, for the most part, right? So I think because of that, it's a little bit more challenging, but at the same time, I think it offers even more value. And that's why when you look at subscription services and what Sony's doing with that, I think they're going to follow suit with Microsoft and develop something very similar to Game Pass in order to capture that market. But yeah, the whole shutting down of all the legacy stuff with the PS Vita, and I have the PS Vita myself, and I have physical games. I have a feeling now that with and already retro gaming prices have gone up dramatically already. So now with them shutting down the Vita store, I have a feeling that the market price for Vita and physical games are going to go up. The market price for PlayStation 3 and physical media for PlayStation 3 is going to go up. If you are a collector and you enjoy some of the old games, because there's still some good quality games back that you can still play on the Vita and even on the PlayStation 3. I would say get them now before prices start to surge, because I can most guarantee that they will now with what's happening. The other aspect of Sony shutting the stores down for all those particular platforms is that, there's a lot of reports now that states they haven't been really forthcoming with a lot of their developers. And to me, this is to me, from a business perspective, this is very unethical. I think Sony, as a big company, they've been very successful with the PlayStation 4. They most likely told, or gave heads up to a lot of their bigger publishers and developers making games on PS Vita and the old platforms and things like that are still, there's still a lot of developers still making games on the Vita, even though it's been dead by Sony for a couple of years now when they started doing what they did with discontinuing the products and stuff like that. But I think, Sony should have been very forthcoming in terms of giving developers heads up, because definitely a lot of independent developers, they can still make money off of the platform, and I think this is going to burn some bridges. I think Nintendo burned a lot of bridges with the Wii U. They learned a lot of lessons, and that's why the Switch is very successful. They wanted, if third parties were not going to support them, like the bigger guys, like the EAs, which EA still supports them a little bit, but not as much as what they need. They're supporting Sony and Microsoft. Nintendo courted a ton of independent developers, and there's a lot of really good, talented independent developers out there, and they were smart to do so. And I think Microsoft's doing the same thing. I mean, they did snag Damon Baker from Nintendo over to Microsoft in order to kind of build up that relationship with independent developers and indie developers. But I think Sony is starting, this happens with every game company that is the market leader. You get a little bit arrogant, you get a little bit like, hey, you know what, we're making money, we're successful, we don't really need you. So I think that is starting to show a little bit. But I still don't think, I think, there's always two sides of the story, right? So there's going to be some developers that are going to be pissed that the store is closing down for the Vita and the PlayStation 3 and all these other, legacy platforms that Sony has. But it is what it is. End of the day, it's business, and Sony's going to cut their losses. They probably made a conscious business decision to say, hey, you know what? They probably have metrics that they're seeing from the store, because come on, all these companies have metrics and metadata that they're collecting to see who's on, who's playing, what are they looking at, what are they buying. They probably saw the numbers and said, hey, this is how we're going to plan 2021. We're going to shut these services down. You might get a couple of people yelling and screaming on the internet, but those people are small and few in between. Doesn't really represent the whole consumer model that they're going after. And that's the other thing, guys, is like, as much as we like to talk about games here on social media, on YouTube, on Twitter, or wherever platform you guys decide to choose, we are a vocal minority. I think a lot of these companies, they hear us, and oftentimes they'll say they're listening to us. But when you look at the numbers, the overall numbers, because it's a business, guys, they're looking at the numbers, and the mass consumers that buy their products are not watching YouTube, are not on social media day and day, talking about games, talking about exclusives and all that stuff. So they have a much bigger audience to cater to. And as much noise as we make, and we think we're making, it's a small pin drop in a bucket, with what they're trying to do. And that's just the nature of it. So when companies like Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo decide to make some decisions that even as dedicated hardcore gamers, we kind of scratch our head. It's really a business decision. I think if you really look at it, look at what's his name, who's the new guy that took over for Sony. He's not as prominent as some of the other guys before, but I think it's Jim Ryan. So Jim Ryan is not charismatic. He's not a guy that's out there engaging with the gamers. Do you really think he's a gamer himself? No, he's an executive. He's a business guy. He's looking at the overall, he's just looking at numbers and metrics and analytics, and he's making business decisions. That's why Sony goes out there and tries to get exclusives, things with Square Enix and things like that. So yeah, and when you look at other executives like Phil Spencer, at least he's an executive, but he's very casual. He's not a suit and tie guy. You can kind of tell he's very passionate about games. So I think that has helped Microsoft rebuild their brand. Nintendo had Reggie, and you knew Reggie had a really good presence in the public media. But with this Doug Bowser, he's really not that public. He's a business guy, right? So again, all these gaming companies are usually run and made, or the decisions are made by corporate heads. They're business people, and they look at the business aspect of the gaming industry. Now, keep in mind, guys, the gaming industry is a multi-billion-dollar gaming industry. And if you saw some of my older videos where I kind of compared the console gaming with PC gaming, the console gaming market with Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo is equal to just the PC gaming market itself, right? And then the PC gaming market plus the console market is equal to the mobile market gaming itself. So gaming as a whole globally is huge, and this is the reason why gaming, because of the dynamic content of games, is bigger than the movie industry. And that's why a lot of companies are investing into the gaming industry. It's a $1 billion business. So if there's money to be made, then you are for sure going to see a lot of players make a lot of moves within the gaming industry. So yeah, going back and kind of following up this video on the whole Sony aspect, it kind of sucks, and I hope that for the time being, I think the PlayStation Network, it's not going to go anywhere. Like I said, the PlayStation 5 is using the same architecture and the same network. So this fear of the PS4 not syncing up to the PlayStation Network is probably shouldn't be there, But is there still a chance that they would shut PlayStation Network? Yeah, there is. There's always a chance, right? Anything is possible, but is it likely? Probably not, And so I think the worry of the PlayStation 4 bricking if your battery dies is the concern is there because of the way it's set up, but I don't think the PlayStation Network is going to go down anytime soon. Now, that could be a different question if we're talking about this, another 5 or 10 years from now, and Sony decides to change the whole architecture of the PlayStation Network, and the PlayStation 4 is left out in the code, right? That's not going to bode well for me and other users that have a PlayStation 4 or hardware. It's just going to be a brick. Yeah, there can't do anything, right? So, but you know what? I have a lot of trust in the community that somebody's going to find a way. There's always going to be ways to circumvent things. Even if the console manufacturers decide to shut it down, but it is very telling that they're going down this route. Because again, at the end of the day, my only worried with everything that's happening right now with the way digital media is set up and the ways these stores are closing down. Because even if you think about the way Sony's closing all these stores down, Nintendo's doing the same thing. Game Boy Advance stores are going to eventually close down, right? Or the DS stores, not the Game Boy Advance, but the DS, the 3DS stores, the Wii U stores are closing down. So again, when you look at what Nintendo is already doing in 21. They've already discontinued the 3D Mario All-Stars and the Fire Emblem game. So these games came out last year, and they stated that it was going to be a limited release. We had physical releases of both games for 3D All-Star and also the Fire Emblem game. But the Fire Emblem game was actually a collector's edition, and when you got the collector's edition, you had a digital code to download the game. So really, the game was never released physical. It's just digital. The physical version was just a collector's edition with some of the really cool added goodies to it, which I happened to secure, but I had to pay a premium for it because it was so hard to find anywhere on the internet or in the stores. So I didn't pay too much. I paid about $25 over MSRP price, but I think it was overall it's this. I think Nintendo has kind of shown to the rest of the companies like Sony and Microsoft that the marketing tactics of scarcity has worked, and because of that, people are going to buy their games, physical and digital. But again, they, when it comes to game releases now, we're kind of subject to each of the companies' own discretion on how they want the game to be available digitally, right? So again, the physical media is still probably the best way, but with companies, with all three companies going down the route of patches and updates and things like that, I just don't know how viable physical media is going to be in the future when we think about this, or when we reflect about this, 10 or 15 years from now, and we're playing our old games and something happens to the console, whether it's a firmware or something locked out, or somebody doesn't have the latest patch for a physical game, and they're just left out in the code. They can't play the game because it's tied to whatever revision the firmware on the actual system is. So yeah, Sony isn't the only one that's doing this. Nintendo's doing it as well, and Microsoft's doing it as well too, because you do see some games that get deleted from the digital store, and it's just a part of business. That's how it is with digital media. Your games are kind of lost, right? Your digital games that you bought, and really, when you buy digital games, you don't really own the games. You're just buying a licensing to use the game on your platform, and really doesn't really belong to you. Which for the most part, physical media makes you feel like you own the game, and again, just going back to the old school days, I'm looking at all my systems back here. I can pop my game in and play it without having to worry about patching it. So that's the only drawback. As a PC gamer, I'm used to patches and things like that, but I've never had issues with backwards compatibility with my PC games. So it never became a question regarding that. But with the console manufacturers, I think it's about time that they do unify and choose that platform. And it definitely does look like it's happening with the PlayStation Network, with the Xbox Network, and now with the Nintendo Network, right? Everybody has their own network now. So in the future, that network is the platform. And we can come back and visit this topic another time, but I think the future is that the networks are going to be the platform, and the hardware is going to be this commodity that comes in every couple of years. Just like the way, Apple has shown, that the iOS platform is the platform for all their mobile devices. You have phones, you have iPads, you have mini iPads, all these ran iOS, operating system. That was the platform, and you can play several games that were compatible with the old stuff. But then some of the newer games that are on the store will state, oh, you have old hardware, you can't play it on this. It's going to be the same way. The generations are going to eventually fade away. And you can kind of technically would say that the generations would be there based on software developers and the game companies themselves making games that say, hey, you know what? We're making this game, and unfortunately it only supports this hardware and up. So again, the generations are going to be these hardware cyclical platforms that come out that will host the software piece, and that software piece is going to be the platform. The Nintendo Network, again, the Xbox Network that they're rebranding from Xbox Live, and the PlayStation Network, right? So that's going to be the platform of choice. It's going to be very interesting to see how that all unfolds. And with the push of digital media, how many more years do you think we'll have of physical media before it goes away and everything goes pure digital? I think, with the launch of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox, and they have their digital versions along with their physical versions, I'm wondering if the next generation of hardware, there's no more physical media. Everything is all software. Because now when these platforms like Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo go direct to consumer and bypass the retail channels, they save money on shipping, on delays. They can get games out on time and things like that. They have more control, and at the same time, they make more profit. So then does a $70 game make sense for next generation if they're making all these cuts and they're making all this additional profit from cutting out the channel? Is $70 for a game worth it anymore, right? So that's going to be the question for all of us as gamers to kind of talk about in the future. For me, I'm still hopeful. Nintendo has always been one of the players that have, I think they're embracing digital, but they also like the physical media. They like to do their collector's editions and things like that. And even with some of their latest collector's edition, it was like a collector's edition with all this cool physical stuff, but the game was digital. So I think that is also another telling sign of what things are happening. But again, I'm okay as long as these game companies have a plan to preserve a lot of these games that we're buying, digitally. I think we're at this point where the Switch is such a huge success, and with the Nintendo Network, that I think the Nintendo Network is going to be their platform. So whatever it is, the Switch Pro, Switch 2, or whatever might come out, your digital games, should be safe. We know that's going to be happening with Microsoft with all their Xbox games coming out, and the same thing is going to be starting with PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 games. And I'm wondering if the signs of them closing a lot of that stuff out of the store could be something for them to slowly, like I said, they'll cut all the stores out, which they're doing, and then slowly maybe they'll phase PlayStation Now into PlayStation Plus, and then come up with their own virtual console. With a lot of their backwards compatibility, because I think if anybody has shown proof of gamers wanting to play some of the old legacy games, it's both Nintendo and Microsoft. If you think about some of the legacy stuff that they're selling and they're making money on, then they've shown that there's a business model behind it. So just make us gamers happy and make sure that we have access to these games for the ones that we do buy digital. But yeah, still keep making those physical games, guys. If anybody from Microsoft, Sony, or even Nintendo is hearing this podcast or this video, I still think there's a need for physical games. I think it's very cyclical when it comes to a lot of things. Even with the music and the movies, a lot of people went digital, but then you're starting to see a little bit of a comeback with people that are looking for some of the physical stuff with music and movies. So it's a cycle, guy. It's a cycle. It's back and forth. But yeah, tell me what you guys think of what everything is happening. A lot of the video today was focused on Sony and what they did, but we also branched out to how this impacts, the rest of the whole gaming industry with Microsoft and Nintendo. And it really gives us a really good insight on a lot of things that are happening. So I am very open to your opinions and your suggestions. So post them down in the comments. Hit a like if you like the content of this video and the topic that we brought. Like I said, our platform, our users here that are subscribed to my channel, we're all gamers here. There's no need for bashing each other, whether you're playing on PlayStation, on Xbox, on Nintendo, on PC, on mobile, or whatever platform you're playing. It's all about playing games. It's about enjoying games and having the opportunity to play these great games that are out there, good or bad. You only value the good ones when you realize you're playing the bad ones, right? So with that, I appreciate everybody's time for stopping by. And again, if you're new here and you want to support the channel, hit a like and subscribe and follow me. I try to post videos regularly. A lot of my subscribers know that I do this for fun, and I try to do this with a regular update so that we can still talk about games and a lot of the news that are happening. And I build a lot of my content based on suggestions. So post suggestions in the comments and let me know what you want to talk about, and I'll definitely create a short video so that we can, I can give you my perspective, but also we can discuss about that within the community. So with that, guys, have a great day. I hope you guys are doing great during these times. Things are getting better, but definitely have a great day, and I will talk to you guys next time, right? Take care.